Dr Ritesh Chugh is a Senior Lecturer at CQUniversity, and he's suggesting that people try something called e-fasting. We're going to learn a little bit more about it. Dr Chugh, welcome to ABC Local Radio Queensland.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
My pleasure. Now, why would people even need to start thinking about dieting on the digital?
Well, I see social media as a double-edged sword. I mean, you pointed out a lot of drawbacks. There are benefits to it as well. And it's actually those benefits that are causing the addiction, because most of us end up spending excessive time, often repeatedly and aimlessly, on social media. And that's why I see it as an addiction. When you look at the number of people who are on social media, I'll just use Facebook as an example. And I jokingly call Facebook as the third largest place in terms of population after China and India. And we're spending a lot of time on Facebook and other social media. There was a report by Census that showed that Australians spend an average of 8.5 hours on Facebook, with 24% checking social media more than 5 times a day. Hence the addiction.
Well, addiction to, say, tobacco might lead to breathing problems, lung problems, cancer. Addiction to alcohol might lead to liver problems. What might addiction to social media lead to? Social
media is habit forming. Research has shown that it leads to poor social relationships. It leads to stress. It leads to increased anxiety, compulsivity, exhibitionism or show-off on Facebook and other social media platforms, and also leads to comparison. These are all addictive traits of social media.
Yeah, you did mention there's obviously plenty of good things about social media, or people wouldn't even use it in the first place.
Absolutely.
So how do people go about trying to strike a better balance in life?
I think the term that I introduce here is e-fasting or electronic fasting. How I would define electronic fasting is abstaining from electronic devices and services such as smartphones and social media, because I actually see smartphones as a trigger to the social media addiction also. That's because it has become so easy for us to access these social media platforms on our smartphones. I mean, even just before going to bed, people, they've got their phones in their hands, so they're spending that excessive time on social media. So what my e-fasting plan is, there are a few tips that I'd like people to try out. In fact, some of those tips I practice myself. People can try and abstain from social media. Now, I'm not saying go cold turkey on it. I would say maybe try it off abstaining for a day or maybe the weekend. Some sort of self-regulation could also help. Now, self-regulation could be such as surfing your social media platform once a day, or not checking while you're in bed. People have this habit, as I said, you're going to bed, let's spend some time on social media. The other thing I'd also suggest is disabling alerts and notifications. This is one thing I practice myself. I've disabled all alerts and notifications from my social media platforms so that I don't get notifications all the time, because the way social media platforms work is they constantly push out these messages to us, which reminds us or which creates the urge for us to go and check. So by disabling them, that urge is reduced. So instead of being a push-based model, it becomes a pull-based model, which means I go to the social media platform when I have the time, which might be once a day or in the evening, in the morning, and that's something I decide to do. Finally, I'd also suggest possibly trying to delete the app from your smartphone. As I said, smartphone is a trigger for that addiction, which means people would only access their social media messages when they're in front of a computer, a personal computer, and that could reduce the addiction.
Dr Ritesh Chugh with us on ABC Local Radio Queensland. He's a Senior Lecturer at CQUniversity. We're rapidly running out of time, Dr Chugh, but some people probably listening to this think that you're just being a bit old-fashioned here. Why would you possibly want to, cut back on social media?
See, the thing is, if we are spending too much time on social media and not utilizing our time in other gratifying activities of life, it's a problem. And my endeavor is to try and reduce that problem. I mean, I've heard people say that, well, it's not reached a stage where medical intervention is required. But nevertheless, everyone deep down in their hearts accept that social media addiction is taking up their time. And hence, I would like the addiction to go down. Because there's research evidence, there's anecdotal evidence, and ultimately, there is no one formula that fits everyone. We have to manage our own social media. I know social media is here to stay, but then everyone needs to evaluate their own social media usage behavior and adjust accordingly. Adam?
Dr Ritesh Chugh, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your tips for people, your e-fasting tips for people. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much for your time, Adam.